Yes, we're good. Okay. All right. Hello, everybody. Thank you for joining us on your Friday afternoon, or for our presenters, their Friday evening. Thank you for joining us for our last presentation as a part of Etown's International Education Week. We're going to be hearing from two of our recent alums, specifically from the Spanish Education Department, about their experiences studying abroad and then how they ultimately use those experiences to launch into working abroad after graduation. So I believe that I have met most of you in person, fortunately, but my name is Megan Bell. I am the study abroad advisor here at Etown. So if you have any general questions about study abroad, or you'd like to get connected with our presenters following the presentation, feel free to reach out to me either at bellm@etown.edu or studyabroad@etown.edu. So without further ado, I'm going to hand it over to our presenters.
Okay, I can start. Good afternoon, everyone, and thank you so much for coming to this presentation. My name is Melissa Germano, and I'm a 2019 graduate of Etown College. I don't know if Nelly, you want to introduce yourself as well?
Yeah, sure. I'm Nelly, and I graduated in 2017. As Megan mentioned, we're both from the Spanish Education Department. So I'm a Spanish Education graduate, and I've been living in Spain since graduating from college. Yeah.
Okay. Well, as you already know, we're going to be talking about how to live abroad after graduation. And Nelly and I both graduated different years. Like we said, we're both from different places in the US. We have different backgrounds, but I think it's quite interesting to note the similarities between us before diving into our personal experiences with living abroad. As we had both mentioned, we're both Spanish education majors, or were back in the good old days. And we continue to be huge advocates for the major, even after graduation. I know that we were both super passionate about it. So anybody in the audience who's like potentially thinking about Spanish ed, do it. Anyway, we both studied abroad as well in Valladolid, Spain. And I just think this is quite unique because it's not a commonly chosen destination for study abroad like Madrid or Barcelona. And I like to say that this is the place where my desire, and I'm sure Nelly's as well, was ignited to kind of teach abroad. And lastly, we were both granted Fulbright scholarships to teach as English teaching assistants, or I might refer to it later on as ETA, because that's what we kind of call it. And Fulbright Spain, as for all Fulbright grants, but I'm just kind of here talking about Spain, is incredibly competitive, I would say. So the fact that we were both granted one of these is super special, I think.
Yeah.
Okay, so I'm gonna start us off today. Like I said, my name is Melissa Germano, and I'm a recent kind of graduate from Etown. Last year I was an English teaching assistant in Spain with Fulbright. And this year I'm also happy to share that I was chosen to renew my grant as a culture and pedagogy mentor. And as far as I know, I'm not sure, but I don't think every Fulbright destination has this sort of mentor program. But in Spain, Spain is divided into kind of like states like the US, and each state that has Fulbrighters also has a mentor that grantees are paired up with. So I am the mentor of the La Rioja region, which is the smallest, but I would say the most mighty region of Spain. And if it kind of sounds familiar to you, it might be because it's very well known for the wine, which is super good, but vineyards, wine, all that fun stuff. Before I kind of go into depth about my Fulbright grants and what last year looked like and what this year looks like, I wanted to discuss my time at Etown first and the Fulbright application process. Um, but like it says here, Etown is where I feel like I found my true passion, which is teaching abroad. When I got to the college in 2015, yikes, I was super confused on my major. I had this strange mixture of like mini passion projects going on between elementary education and Spanish and special ed, and I loved science too, so I didn't know what to do. I began as an elementary ed major and a Spanish double major at first, but then after talking with some of the wonderful faculty of the modern language department, I decided to declare my major as Spanish ed, which is pre-K through 12 certification in Pennsylvania. And a huge part of this was the faculty attention and this combination of pedagogy classes and language classes, which ranged from Spanish literature to conversation to my personal favorite, grammar. That's why I'm a language teacher, right? So this plus my fieldwork placements, which were every semester, which is super unique at Etown, ultimately led into me doing my student teaching practicum, which was at the beginning in a bilingual third grade classroom where we taught everything in Spanish, from morning meeting to science to math to even language arts was in Spanish. So it was super interesting. And that plus the children's Spanish program on campus was definitely where I began my love for bilingual education. And then for the second half of my student teaching, I was in a Spanish 3, Spanish 4, and AP Spanish. I was in multiple classes with those in high school, which for me was a little bit difficult because I like the little kids better, but I had an awesome teacher to support me there. And then at the bottom, I have 2 extra things that I was involved with on campus at Etown. And I think for me, it was an important factor in my Etown education, but I just want to say that none of this, like the honors program, peer mentoring, even the education major, none of these are required for a Fulbright. It's just where I come from. For me, I think that these 2 factors kind of maybe gave my application a boost in some areas than it may have been weaker before, but ultimately it's not required. And I think that the peer mentoring program definitely taught me how to navigate mentoring people my own age, which is what I'm going to be doing this year as well. So I want to rewind a little bit to my study abroad experience in fall of 2017. Like I said, I chose Valladolid, Spain. And I lived with a host family, so I couldn't speak English to them. They didn't speak it at all. And I still have a great relationship with that family. They're awesome. So I definitely learned there how to navigate the language if I didn't know a word, how to describe around it, which is one of my favorite tips for anybody who's learning a second language. And then I had Spanish classes from about 8:30 in the morning until lunchtime, which in Spain is at 2 o'clock. But I think they let us go at 1:30. So along with those classes, I also had an English teaching internship, which I did for 2 days a week in a local elementary school. And that internship, plus my tutoring classes, which I gave to local families, definitely taught me how much I loved teaching English as a foreign language or any foreign language. Just to see these kids light up when they understood something or when they were able to explain something to me in English is definitely just so rewarding, and I get to experience it every day now. And I also made friends from the local university, not where I went to class, because in Valladolid, you take classes at a certain school that's for foreign students. For my year, at least, it was only students from the US, but I'm not sure about other years. And I was also able to travel around Spain and Europe. So, with all that being said, my study abroad experience inspired me to apply for Fulbright. I've also been super competitive with academics before, so I've always kind of had my eye on it, but studying abroad definitely solidified, this desire to do it. Something that was prestigious, that would allow me to continue doing what I love abroad was like the golden opportunity for me. So I worked very closely with Professor Benowitz, who was and still is, I believe, the Fulbright Program advisor at Etown, as well as my professors and faculty members that wrote the letters of recommendation. And everybody was extremely helpful and supportive during this process. I couldn't have asked for anything better. But I will begin to talk about like the application the process now. So it started with me selecting a country. I originally knew I wanted to return to Spain, but I had like this brief moment where I was like, maybe I want to test out the water somewhere else in South America or Latin America. But that only lasted like a day or so because I came right back to Spain where it all started. So once I decided that, that's when the essay drafting began. So the Fulbright application, for me at least, I'm not too sure if it has changed, was a mixture of short answer questions, but the bulk of it was 2 main essays. So Professor Benowitz and I worked endlessly to edit these essays over and over again until they were nearly perfect. And I love to write, but the task of just 2 essays that are both 1-page single space was so daunting because I had so much I wanted to say, and it seemed nearly impossible to communicate everything that I wanted to a committee that was ultimately going to decide my fate on this dream. But we worked on it. I think the first time I met with Professor Benowitz, my essays were 2 pages single spaced. So we worked on it every Monday morning. I think for maybe an hour and a half, I was in his office and we narrowed it down. And then we did an in-person mock interview where the professors who wrote my letters of recommendation and Professor Benowitz reviewed my essay drafts and asked me interview questions about the content, kind of trying to make sure that nothing slid through the cracks that was important with my personal story or anything of that nature. And then after that, Professor Benowitz and I continued polishing these essays until the application date in early October, which is when I hit submit. And then comes the waiting period. So after months of waiting and attempting to forget about this, in January, I found out I was a semifinalist, which means you're on to like the final round. And then I waited a few more months until March when they told me I was a finalist. And it was an awesome moment because I remember I was cooking dinner and I told myself, I was refreshing my email a lot those days. And I was like, okay, today I'm going to disconnect. And that's the day when I found out, when I said I was going to disconnect. And I screamed. It was a beautiful moment. So now I have a few pictures about my town in La Rioja. It's called Calahorra. It's not the capital city, but it's the second biggest, although it's super small. And this is my host institution. It's called Colegio San Agustín. And this was on my first day of teaching last year. Yeah, this school means a lot to me. The teachers, the students, just lots of good memories have happened there. And like I said, it's a small town, but there are a lot of things to see, I think. Lots of cathedrals and churches, which are pretty characteristic all across Spain. And last year, Las Fiestas, which are probably not going to happen this year, unfortunately, but it's a whole week off from school where we were able to celebrate the patron saint of the city. And I got to be immersed in the culture and talk with natives and find out what was so important about these fiestas. And I had a great time last year. And also La Rioja and Spain in general. But this area in particular has a lot of gorgeous scenery and nature spots like parks and ponds and mountains. Like I said, the vineyards, it's gorgeous around fall time now with the leaves changing colors. So last year in my school, I was teaching solely English classes from infantil, which is like preschool, to 6th grade in a bilingual school. And each day I would have a mixture of classes. So I started my day with infantil, and then I would go to 2nd grade, and then 4th, then 5th, then 6th. It was great. I loved it. This year looks a little bit different though, and I'll go into that later. But also as a Fulbrighter, you are required to have a side project, which can be anything in the community or any extra thing that you want to implement in your school that isn't required with your English teaching hours. And I did a pen pal project where the students in my 4th grade class wrote letters to students in high school in the US. It was kind of like a big buddy project, I like to call it. And they would just talk about what their days look like in school, what they were like. They would ask each other questions and kind of get these cultural conversations going. As you can see on the right there, I do have an example from one of my students, and it was definitely one of the neater versions. So I put it on there so y'all could read it. And to me, it seems near perfect. These kids are brilliant. They start learning English in preschool. So by the time they get to higher level primary school, I would say that they have a good grasp on English. And another thing that I did, which was pretty cool, was American Culture Day. My school normally had just an English day where they would do some plays, some songs. The little kids would do poetry readings or book readings. But last year, I really wanted to be involved in it and kind of turn it to American Culture Day, which sounds bad, but that's what I was there for, to teach them about our culture. And I have some pictures on the next slide. So in the entryway of the school, we had cutouts of school buses and taxis. School buses don't exist here, and taxis do, but they don't look like that. So the kids were taking pictures in there in the morning. They were super excited. We decorated the floor of the entryway with Route 66, as you can see, because that was something that a lot of them knew about. So I kind of went with it since they knew what it was. And you can see that we got American flags on the banners and we hung it up. And on the right, I have an example, and I picked New York because I'm from New Jersey and it's the closest one that we had. So I was like, yay, New York. Each class did a poster or bigger, like you can see they're big boards with states, and they wrote about the history, food, famous people, interesting facts, and famous places of certain states. And I was the one who picked picked out the states for each class based on, the students' prior knowledge of the states or important landmarks, important people that they knew about. So the entryway was decorated with these huge boards, and I think the kids learned a lot. That's what elementary school did. In preschool, they listened to readings or plays put on by the high schoolers who took some famous books or plays and acted them out. And my favorite part of this day, I put it there in the middle so I didn't forget. During recess, we had America's Got Talent, and I was one of the judges as well as the other Fulbrighter at my school and two of the teachers. And the kids showed up. A lot of them sang in English as well. They did dances to songs in English. And it was just such a fun day. It was one of my favorite memories of last year. And I think a lot of cultural exchange happened there. Okay, and on to this year. As we all know, everything looks a little strange this year with COVID, but I do have the same responsibilities in the classroom. But this year, I like it better actually, because I'm on a 2-week rotation only in primary, only in elementary school, because some of the younger kids, like in the US, don't wear masks because they're so little. So for example, right now I'm with 2nd grade and I'm with them for 2 weeks just in case the class has to close down or if it's quarantine. It's just a lot easier if I'm in one place and not spread across every grade. But also this year, I teach all bilingual subjects instead of just English. So I teach English, I teach arts and crafts, which I'm not an artsy person, but I like to make fun of it. And I think the kids have fun knowing that their teacher is not artsy. Natural science, social science, all of that we do in English. And I like to think that my student teaching in the bilingual setting helps me now, even though it's kind of flip-flopped. I'm teaching now in English and then I was teaching in Spanish, but it's kind of the same thing teaching this content in a second language for these kids. And the other Fulbrighters aren't here yet. I'm excited for them to come in January, which is when my mentor position will officially start in person. As of right now, it's kind of like the peer mentor program, like I mentioned. I've been having Zoom chats with them, other team building activities. We had Zumba night, which was super fun. So that's what I've been doing now. I'm excited for other Fulbright friends to get here in January, but until then, my responsibilities are answering lots of doubts and questions on Zoom, which is what I'm here for. So that's my year so far.
Cool. So now I'll get into my experience. Melissa talked a lot about the Fulbright application process. And so my process was pretty similar to Melissa's, except at the time I worked closely with a different director of that department. And so the person that I worked closely with wasn't Professor Benowitz, but someone else. And it was similar to Melissa's experience. I would meet every Friday afternoon for about an hour, and I completed everything in about a month before the application was due. And so I won't mention much of this, I don't think, in my presentation, but my Fulbright application process was pretty similar to Melissa's. And like Melissa said, we have very similar paths that we've taken to get to where we are today, which I think is really interesting. But now I'll tell you about my story. So like Melissa, I've been able to have been granted a Fulbright twice. My first year was in La Rioja, where Melissa is currently, and I was there for 1 academic year. And then I was able to renew for a second year in the Canary Islands. So I was in the island of Tenerife, and I'll talk about that. And so since then, I've continued to live in Spain through teaching English with a separate program, and I've also been an au pair. And so I'll talk a bit about that as we go along with the presentation. So my experience, like I said, it's very similar to Melissa's. I was a Spanish education pre-K through 12 major. And like Melissa, I came into Etown not really knowing exactly it was that I wanted to do. I knew I wanted to teach. I've always wanted to be a teacher. For as long as I can remember, I remember wanting to be a teacher, and teachers have always had such a tremendous impact on my life. And so I've always felt very comfortable at school. And I came to Etown declared as an elementary education major, just like Melissa. And then I remember I was presented with the opportunity to go to an event on campus, and I met Dr. Lorenzen, who is the advisor for the Spanish education pre-K through 12 major. And I recall that she mentioned the Spanish education major, and I remember not being very interested and thinking, you're crazy, I would never want to get into Spanish education. I'm a heritage speaker. My parents are from Mexico, but I was born and raised in the US, and I didn't really have much of a connection with my Mexican culture or heritage. But then, of course, we all had to take a language class at Etown for a semester. And I took Spanish because Dr. Lorenzen was very friendly and nice. And I placed into a Spanish class with her. And she really inspired me to want to teach because she was just so energetic and happy and excited about languages. And it was then that I realized, wow, Spanish is very cool. And I felt more connected to my heritage, and I wanted to continue on. So I also switched into my major like Melissa. So I also student taught just like Melissa. Melissa and I both had to teach at 2 different placements during our senior year for student teaching. I was at an elementary school for my first couple of, I think 7 or 8 weeks. And I taught in a 5th grade immersion classroom, like Melissa, teaching all subjects in Spanish. And I loved it so much. Then I moved on to the high school right next door in the same school district. And Melissa and I actually had the same co-teacher for our high school placement. And he's such a lovely teacher. And it's cool that we both, got to work with the same teacher. And like Melissa, I prefer younger kids. And so my high school placement was okay, but I definitely missed my kiddos at the elementary school. So in addition to just being a Spanish ed major, I also worked lots of different things on campus, and I was involved with lots of different activities. I was an international language assistant. And basically, I worked with students who were coming from different countries to Etown, and I would work closely with them and make sure that they had a really positive experience in Etown, whether they were here for a semester, a year, or all 4 years. I really liked that job because I got to meet people from different countries. It was super cool. I was also a jaywalker, so I gave tours on campus. I was a kinesis mentor for a program called Momentum that tries to help first generation students have a really successful transition to college. I was a tutor for learning services, and I was also a photographer for the Italian, the newspaper on campus. So I did lots of different things. So like Melissa, I also went to Valladolid. Initially, I had chosen to go to Mexico because I wanted to just rediscover my Mexican heritage. But in the end, the resident director for the program in Valladolid, came to Etown for a visit, and I talked to him after already submitting my application for the program in Mexico. And after talking to him, I canceled the application to Mexico and immediately applied for the program in Spain. And I was in Valladolid for a year. Melissa and I actually lived with the same host family. And so I also still keep in touch with my host mom and all of her kids and her grandkids. And they're lovely, like Melissa said. And so I was there for a year at the foreign language school that we'd all attend. In addition to taking classes, I also volunteer twice a week at an immigration center pretty close to where I was living, and I would offer free English classes to anyone interested. And I also gave private lessons, and I would teach twice a week at a school in the outskirts of Valladolid. And so I had a pretty busy schedule. I was always super busy, but it was a good kind of busy, I think. And I got to travel all over Spain and all over Europe, just like Melissa. So on to my first Fulbright experience. For my first Fulbright, I was placed in La Rioja. And I applied for La Rioja because they had more of a focus on elementary education, and because I'm more passionate about teaching younger students, I thought that I would most likely be placed at elementary school or something similar. And so I was placed to the capital city in this region called Logroño. And so I worked at a private school, and I taught classes as low as 3rd grade to as high as what we would consider in the US to be 10th grade. And so I taught at this school, and each school uses you differently. Some schools want you to co-teach with the teacher, while other schools want you to pull kids out and work with them in small groups or individually. And at this school, I mostly pulled students out of the classroom, and we would do different activities together to just reinforce whatever they were learning in class. And this is what I did. And I really liked it because I got to really know the kids more. I think because it was just us, working on different things together. And it, I think, was a really fun experience, and my first experience really teaching in Spain in this kind of Fulbright setting, which was really, really nice. And I have fond memories, and I think about these kids a lot, and it was a good first year. So a little bit more about Logroño. So it's the capital of La Rioja. Like Melissa said, La Rioja is a pretty small region, it's the smallest region in Spain. And so their population, is about 150,000 people. So pretty tiny, but so beautiful. Logroño is so picturesque. It's so lovely. And there's also a university in the city. So it's really easy to meet other young people, especially young Spanish people, and Spanish people from all over Spain, come into Logroño to study university there too. And it's such a beautiful, beautiful city. So I want to go back whenever things are open to revisit everything. So on to my second experience. So I was able to renew my Fulbright because of unusual circumstances that we had at the time. I wasn't a mentor like Melissa. Usually, like Melissa mentioned, there are mentors for the Fulbright program in Spain, and otherwise you can't renew. But when I was finishing my first Fulbright with La Rioja, the Fulbright Commission released information that they were going to be opening a new region to the Fulbright community in Spain, and they were going to be looking for current grantees to renew and teach in the Canary Islands. They really wanted the first year of Fulbright being in the Canary Islands to be a success. And so they wanted to select a few just current ETAs to be able to teach and, just lead a positive, grand experience. And I said I was interested. And after reviewing my school's, I think, profile of how I was doing at the time at my school in La Rioja, Fulbright decided to move ahead and grant me a position to teach in the Canary Islands. So I was able to teach in Tenerife, one of the islands, and I was so happy in Tenerife. Tenerife was super cool. I taught at a primary school, and so I taught preschool through 5th grade. And it was such a fun experience. Unlike my school in La Rioja, I was able to work at this school in the classroom. And so it was mostly me leading the classes or co-teaching with the teacher I was with. And I loved it because I was able to really just get in the classroom, which is what I love to do. I'm a teacher, and teach the kids, and just be with them. And I felt so comfortable. I still think about this school all the time. The kids were precious and their English levels were amazing. And they always impressed me with how good they were at everything. I also gave private English lessons in Tenerife. And for my Fulbright side project, I decided to create a mindfulness workshop. And so I talked to the teachers I was working with, and I created my own mindfulness workshop that I then led to the students. And I did this workshop with every grade I taught. And so it took about 2 months for me to complete my workshop with every grade. And we did this all in English. And at the end, I gave them a certificate to state that they had completed, my mindfulness workshop. And it was cool because we got to use English in a different setting, and they learned a lot. And they really impressed me with how much they really were absorbing about mindfulness in general. So here are some of the people, fellow Fulbright grantees that I was working with in Tenerife. So Tenerife is one of many islands in the Canary Islands. And so Tenerife is one of the biggest islands. And so I was in Tenerife with about, I'm trying to count the number of people in the picture, for like 6 other grantees. And we were all spread out in the island. And so my school is actually at the very bottom of Tenerife. But the girls I worked with were mostly based in the north. But I decided to live in the north of Spain anyway, just to be closer to them and to be in the capital. And so I would take a bus all the way down the island, down the coast. And so my commute to school was beautiful. It was like the ocean. And I was able to teach in the south and live up in the north. And I had a really good time. It's really sunny in Tenerife, so it's always really nice there. So a bit more about the Canary Islands. So like I mentioned, I lived in the north of the island. I would commute to a school. It was a long commute, but definitely worth it. And Tenerife was amazing, super sunny. And the people in the Canary Islands are a bit different than the people on the mainland. They really are proud to be from the Canary Islands. And it's very much like a South American kind of vibe in the Canary Islands. A lot of people who live in the Canary Islands are from South America or have some origins from South America. And so a lot of my students were from Peru or Brazil, in different countries in South America. And they were super proud about it too. And even the Spanish they use is a bit different. In Spain, on the mainland, we usually use vosotros when we talk to people in groups, but in the Canary Islands, that's too formal. And so everyone talks to each other with ustedes instead. And a lot of their slang and even their accent is super different. It's very much like the Spanish that I spoke growing up with my family, since my family's from Mexico. And so it's super different and definitely gives you like a different perspective into Spanish life and just Spanish culture. So after my 2 years with Fulbright, I wanted to continue living in Spain. And so there's a general English teaching program in Spain called Auxiliares de Conversación. And so this is a program that's sponsored by the Spanish government. And so they want native speakers to come to Spain and to teach English just like Fulbright does. And so you can apply to this program and teach English in Spain. They also give you a monthly stipend and health insurance, and it's not as competitive as Fulbright. So if you really, really want to teach English in Spain, for example, apply to this program as well, because they accept almost everyone. And they just pay you a bit less than Fulbright would, but you have the same duties and responsibilities as you would teaching English with Fulbright. And so last year, I lived in Valladolid. I actually went back to Valladolid and I lived there for a year. And it was cool to be back in Valladolid, not as a student, but as a teaching assistant. And I was able to live with a fellow English teaching assistant, and I got to meet lots of other lovely, wonderful ETAs. And I worked at a high school. And so I worked with students as young as 12 to as old as 18. and that was cool too. I was in all English classes, and I worked 4 days a week, and it was really nice. And I also tutored. And this year I'm in Madrid with the same program, because you can renew for an extra year, and you can renew for as long as you want actually with this program. So if you really want to teach abroad, you can easily come to Spain with this program. And so I want to talk a bit about au pairing. Au pairing is not something I knew much about before coming to Spain, and it's something I wish I knew before all of this, because I would have been able to come abroad through au pairing. So au pairing is basically a live-in nanny position, but you have much less expectations than a nanny position would entail. So basically, an au pair is a person from a different country who goes to a foreign country to live with a family, usually, and to help take care of the children while sharing their culture and their language with this family. And so as an au pair, you live with the family for free, and you eat with them, and they pay you like pocket money. So they give you like a weekly wage, and that's how you live. And so I've been able to au pair 4 times now. So whenever the academic year comes to an end, I usually au pair during the summers, because this allows me the opportunity to be able to live with a family, live in a different country, and to do what I love, which is to be with kids. So I've au paired 4 times. My first time was in La Rioja, in a village of 117 people in La Rioja. This was such a unique experience, and it was a positive one because I continued to want to au pair. Then I au paired in Zamora, which is a town in the region of Castilla y León, and I was there for 3 months with a lovely Spanish family that I still keep in touch with. And then I au paired for a month in Germany, in Munich, because I wanted to learn German. And I thought, well, why not go to Germany, and learn some German there? And I was there living with a German family. And my most recent au pair experience has been in Paris. So over this summer, I was in Paris in the suburbs, au pairing to a wonderful family. They weren't French, they were actually Scottish, but I was able to take care of their precious little 3-year-old boy. And it was like having a little brother, it's like a fun thing for me to do. And so I think that au pairing is like a great way to travel and to just create connections and to see the world. And so I wish I knew about this before studying abroad, because I would have done this during the summers off from college. Yeah, so we've come to the end, basically. Like Melissa, I've had such a wonderful time at I had such a wonderful time at Etown, and Etown really allowed me the opportunity to really see what it was that I wanted to do in the end, which is teach abroad. And I'm equally as passionate as Melissa of just in regards to teaching abroad. And I'm so grateful to be here. And I really think Etown helped give me all of the resources and tools to be able to be here. Like I thank my lucky stars every day. If it wasn't for Etown, I don't think I would be here, living my dream. And so I've had such a great time.
Yes, I agree. I definitely think that if I hadn't chose Etown, I wouldn't have gotten that attention or from the faculty and staff to be able to get the Fulbright, to be able to find my passion. So I also am super thankful for everybody who has helped me out along the way. And here we have our emails, and Nelli has her blog there. So please feel free to reach out to any of us about questions. If you want to hear more, I'm always here for that too.
So thank you both so much. It's so exciting to hear about both of your experiences and how you got there, and just kind of the full picture from this, even before you picked Etown, to picking Etown, to studying abroad, to now being abroad again, working through the Fulbright or other opportunities. So thank you again so much for your time. We'd like to open it up to questions. If anybody has any questions, feel free to unmute yourself or type them in the chat, and I'll make sure that Melissa and Nelli see those. I guess while we're waiting potentially for some questions to come in, Melissa and Nelly, what would you say to current students that are maybe thinking about pursuing, Fulbright or just working abroad after graduation? What would you encourage them to do now at Etown in order to make that next step possible?
I would just say get involved in any way that you can, because I did peer mentoring because I thought it would be fun and I wanted to, I don't know, help pave the way for freshmen, at Etown. And it led me here. It led me to now having this mentor role, and I just never pictured that until I was here. Um, and as well as studying abroad, do it because you might just find out that you love it and you might never want to go back home.
Yeah, I agree with Melissa, just getting involved with anything on campus, and it really helps boost your application, I think, too. I did lots of things on campus because I wanted to, and I thought it would be fun, but it really does help your profile and gives you an edge. So like Melissa, I did the children's Spanish program, and just that, in addition to just my major and the other things I did on campus, I think really gave my application like an edge. And so get involved and do things that you think will be fun, and in the end will be able to help you with your application.
Yeah, and I just want to say that all of these things, like I had mentioned before, aren't requirements. A lot of people who are teaching English in Spain come from many different backgrounds, and I think that's the beauty of the Fulbright program. Some people studied medicine, some people studied like history, some people studied like accounting, and we're all here, we all have arrived at the same place, and I think it's just such a unique opportunity to learn from each other.
Yeah.
That's great. Thank you both. We did have a question that came in. One of our students on the call today asked, how does your family feel about you living abroad? And do you ever want to come back to the US and teach here? So I guess kind of adding on to that too, like long term, do you both see yourself in Spain for the foreseeable future? Or is this kind of the next year or two and then coming back? I know I'm asking a big life question with that.
That's an interesting question. This year has just taught us that as much as we plan and plan and plan, like things just might not turn out the way that you like ever want them to. I would say that I could see myself staying here with a job, potentially going back home to the US is a nice thing for like summers and vacations as of right now, but I'm just really enjoying where I'm at currently. So that's me. I still don't know for sure, so I'm sorry. But you had asked about how my family feels about me living abroad. We definitely have come around on this topic. And I would say that they are super proud of what I've accomplished. I did have to kind of explain the significance of what Fulbright means to some of my extended family, because I don't think they really understood the significance or why I would want to do it. But I think in my second year right now, of course, they have their concerns about COVID, but overall, it's a positive feeling and they're proud, I think.
As for me, my parents, like I also, like Melissa, I had to explain what Fulbright really meant, because for them it was just like going back to Spain, like you're going back and this time you're going to teach, and my parents just didn't really realize just how grand Fulbright is. So they definitely miss me. They definitely ask me when I'm coming back. And like Melissa, I think it will be nice to be able to go back and visit for summers and such whenever things are better in the world. I've actually not gone back to the US in almost 4 years. I haven't been back at all to visit my family or anything, and they haven't come to Spain to see me just because they're so busy and always working. But I want to go back whenever I can to see everyone, see family and friends. And I do see myself staying in in Spain or in Europe for the foreseeable future. I'm just so happy here. And I think honestly, my mental health is better here in Spain. And I feel way more relaxed here. Maybe it's also like the Spanish culture. And I've created a life for myself here. And moving back home, I think for me would me leaving so much behind. But I'm also interested in working in other countries. There are programs similar to teaching English in Spain and different countries. And I'm interested in teaching English in France. And so that's something I want to work towards. And so I'm taking French classes at the moment now, trying to work towards that goal. And like I said, I have friends and roots here, so I don't see myself going back soon. But I think I would go home if there was the perfect job. Like I do sometimes miss teaching Spanish. And so if I found like the perfect job profile, which for me would be maybe teaching immersion Spanish at maybe an elementary school, I think that's something that would maybe entice me to want to go home and pursue. So I'm not sure though.
Yeah, no pressure by any means. I don't think anybody has like long-term figured out. I was just curious while we had you what you were thinking. Also, just kind of adding on to this overall conversation, we do have Dr. Lorenzen on the call today, and she is on the National Selection Committee for the Fulbright. So she's offered to chat just a little bit about the overall application process for Carly and Gina who might be interested in applying in the future. So thank you, Dr. Lorenzen.
Sure. I don't know if I can turn my video on or not. Oh, there. Hi.
Hi.
Gina and Carly. Hi. Hola. Gina and Carly both have class with me this semester, so they can talk to me anytime. But I'm on the committee, and it's a 3-year stint, and this is my 3rd year. So I've learned a lot, and I'd like to repeat it again in the future. And there's really no one size fits all for the applications. I thought there would be. When I first was on the committee, I was surprised. So if your GPA is not perfect, it's okay. It's really, truly okay. We've had so many conversations on that committee about GPA. Like, no one thinks it's important to have a perfect GPA. In fact, when someone has a perfect GPA, we're like, well, have they done any activities? Like, we want to balance it out. So somebody who has a little bit lower GPA who explains why. Like, I started out as a biochem major and I realized it wasn't my thing, and now I'm a fine arts major. Like, explain that in your application. Or
Oh, I think you may have froze on us.
How about activity? I think to classroom, working with people. And I know Carly and Gina both have a lot of service experience. So yeah, if you just what is you make to be in a classroom, and even your language proficiency isn't the most important. It helps, but it's not the most important thing. So these ladies are all at the 300 level, the advanced level, so that's good. I think at the schools, they want to know that they're bringing in someone who won't be high maintenance. So if you can show that you take initiative, that you'll jump right in and start working with them, that you won't cause them problems, but instead you will help them, that's what they want. They want you to be a native speaker of English, which is what we all are. And that you're empathetic. And if you've taken a lot of Spanish classes, they know you're empathetic. They know that you know what it feels like to learn a language. You don't have to be the most proficient person in the room.
Yeah, no, that's
you have to be outgoing. Yeah, so sign up for Toastmasters or whatever they call, like the public speaking or whatever. So,
well, that's awesome. Thank you so much for providing that additional context. I know that the application process can seem so daunting in and of itself, but it's nice to hear, how to make the application work, but then also hear the payoff at the end with what Melissa and Nelly have experienced or are currently experiencing to make it worth those hour-long meetings once a week and that kind of stuff.
My other one piece of advice is if you apply for a Fulbright, when they ask you about your project, it should be specific, but it should also be manageable. So we've had people who are going to build a library. We're like, how are you, about land permits and construction? And so the people who are going to build a library from scratch, we're like, no. The people who want to do a Girls on the Run club or a litter pickup club or a cooking night once a week where you alternate weeks in cooking American food and Spanish food. Yes, those are good projects. So when you decide on your project, make sure it's something that you could bring something unique to their culture and teach them about our culture, but also that it's manageable and doable instead of like this like pie in the sky project that sounds good but is not feasible at all. So that's my other advice, is a really good specific supplemental project. And it's so good to see Nelli and Melissa.
I know, it's been so long.
Awesome. All right. Well, thank you for that additional context. Does anybody else have any additional questions before we let Melissa and Nelli go? Again, you've got their contact information. If you didn't get a chance to write that down and you'd like it in the future, just let me know. I'm happy to connect you with either one of them. But any other questions while we're all here together? Anything else, Melissa or Nelli, that either of you would like to say? It's just like closing remarks or anything you felt like you haven't said already or want to reiterate to us one last time? It's okay.
I just think, no, it's fine. It's kind of just something I've said multiple times before, just about, you know, if you're on the fence about studying abroad, or if you're on the fence about applying for a Fulbright, what's the worst that could happen? I say do it. Get involved. It might change your life. And for me, like we had all said, just the application process was so worth it. And at Etown, you're in such good hands with all the support that you will have from everybody. So like I said, truly, if it hadn't been for Etown, I just don't think I would be here right now. So take advantage of the opportunity that you have, truly, and run with it.
Awesome. Anything to add, Nelli? It's okay. That's a good.
No, it is. I echo everything Melissa said, and I'm just appreciative of my time at Etown. It feels like forever ago. But without Fulbright, like I say this to people when I meet people here. Like sometimes I tell them, without Fulbright, I wouldn't have been able to sit right here and just talk to you, you know, whoever I meet. And so I'm so grateful for everything, and just everything, you know, that it took to get here. And I thank my lucky stars, and I'm really lucky.
Awesome. Well, we're so lucky to have both of you joining us today. I know that it's now going on 7 o'clock where you are in the evening on a Friday. So I know that you're in lockdown, but I still really appreciate your time on a Friday evening and your wisdom and just your sharing of your experiences. You've both done amazing things and will continue to do some awesome opportunities. So we look forward to staying in touch and seeing what all you accomplish in the future. So thanks for joining us for our international education.
Thank you.
Thanks for having us.
Yeah, of course. All right, we're going to end the presentation here, but I will make the recording available if anybody wants to go back and reference it later or share it with your friends who are also hopefully thinking about applying for the Fulbright. All right, everyone. Have a good afternoon or evening.
Thank you. You too. Thank you so much.
Yeah, no problem. Bye-bye.